5. Countdown was like 2. Go. That was awesome. Hello, everybody out there in Viewerland. I hope you are enjoying how kooky it is here after an earthquake and a eclipse. This is the Pen Parentis Literary Salon for April, and this is me. I'm MM DeVoe, and I founded Pen Parentis, and this is Christina.
Hello.
Darn it. This is Christina Chu right here, who is the best curator in New York City. Just saying. You can't have her.
Thank you.
She's ours. So the topic for tonight is the human condition, which is super exciting. And as you know, when you come early, we love you to please tell us who you are. So if you are on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever you're watching us on, I don't know, what else could you be watching us on? YouTube, sign in and let us know that you're here in the comments. We would love to talk to you, but we don't know you're there unless you tell us. So we're just waiting for you to say hi. And then other than that, Christina, did you want to tell us a little bit about the, oh, look it, there's somebody from Sydney. Drew, we love you. Thank you for coming. Yes. Australia's in the house. Let's see. Let's talk about the human condition a little bit. I think feeling very human.
A topic that is on a lot of people's minds, and we have 3 incredible authors who want to talk about it, and we'll share a little bit about what's the matter, Milda?
Nothing. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't just go right into introducing them before we talked about our sponsors.
Oh, yes.
I was just going to talk about the topic.
Absolutely.
Yeah. As you see, we are together tonight.
And Milda will go on with the rest.
Sorry. It's the earthquake. It shook me a little. Okay. So first of all, hi, Shay. Thank you for coming to us from Washington State. It is very cool. This is like the far away people are. The hilarious thing is that all of our authors are actually super local. And like all of our viewers are super distant. So we're bringing together. We're bringing New York City to you. Please, you may have all of it. It's earthquakey. Our sponsors tonight are NISCA, the NEA, the Poetry Foundation, and the DeGroat Foundation. And we have a new sponsor, the Writers Room New York, who is a season sponsor. They have sponsored us for the whole season. So we want to thank them very kindly.
Yay, Writers Room!
Love them. And they're moving floors. So if you've been to their space recently, then you might have seen it. But if you've been to their space like last year, then you haven't seen it yet. And you should, because the new space is very cool. So without further ado, Christina, tell us about tonight.
Okay. We have 3 amazing authors. This is one of the few times that we actually are an entirely New York cast. So this is kind of interesting. I can't wait to see how it goes. We know all these authors, and they're all amazing, amazing people, and their writing is spectacular. So check us out. Check out our all the books on our list. And I'm going to introduce quickly 2 of our first authors who will read, and then I'm going to introduce our first reader. Jimin Han is the author of The Apology, a Barnes & Noble's Discover pick. It was named a best audiobook of the year by Booklist, a best book of the summer by LA Times, Vanity Fair, Shondaland, and more. She's also the author of A Small Revolution. Our final author will be Keith Gessen. He is the founding editor of literary magazine N+1 and the author of 2 novels, including, most recently, A Terrible Country. He's also the author of Raising Raffi. Finally, and I'm going to introduce this author in full, is Carol LaHines. She's read with us before, so I really am excited to have Carol back. The Vixen Amber Holloway is out this June, so you must absolutely run out and get this because you're going to be blown away. She's going to read from it, I think. So that's really exciting. She's also the author of Someday Everything Will All Make Sense. It was a finalist for the Nielsen Prize for her first novel and American Fiction Award. Her fiction has appeared in many literary journals, including Fence, Hayden's Ferry Review, Denver Quarterly, Cimarron Review, the Literary Review, and others.
recipient of the Lamont Prize for Fiction, and her work has been finalist in the Mary McCarthy Prize in Short Fiction, the David Nathan Mayerson Fiction Prize, the New Letter Short Story Award, and the Disquiet Literary Prize, among others. She is a graduate of New York University, and we're delighted to see her return to our show. As I said, everyone, please welcome Carol.
Thank you.
Yay, Carol! Yay, cat!
Yay, Bella,
Carol,
the cat is inevitable.
Also, you guys,
I love your putt.
In case we thought that like Sydney was the farthest away place, I'm not sure. They might have to thumb wrestle because Charles McNair is here from Bogota. Like,
Wow.
so we're like major. So you guys, just rock it, please, New York State, New York. Let's go. We gotta show off.
So cool. The kitty's settled.
Oh, I love it. Let's go, Carol.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to read from the beginning, chapter 1. Some have questioned my sanity. Only a mentally imbalanced woman, they say, would spy on her estranged husband and his lover from a tree. Only a delusional woman would believe that the husband would one day return when the evidence, engagement to his lover before the ink on the divorce papers was even dry, was demonstrably to the contrary. Only a woman unconcerned with how she is perceived by the outside world, by former spouses and law enforcement circles alike, would commit her observations of the husband and his lover to 8 consecutively numbered spiral-bound notebooks, producing in 3 months' time a comprehensive, incriminating document that would serve to confirm the prosecution's theory that she was a spurned wife with rancor in her heart. Leona Valentine of the Saratoga County Gazette, investigative reporter of the year, 5 years running, called the notebooks, quote, the work of a fragile yet malevolent mind, end quote. Ms. Valentine cited instances of electronic interference and surveillance of the subjects to show alleged mens rea. She retraced the accused's path, admittedly circuitous, to the Home Depot in Schenectady, where the accused purchased certain household items, zip ties, duct tape, she would later use in furtherance of her deranged aims. Jean-Claude, whom the reporter tracked down to a truck stop just north of the U.S.-Canada border, informed Ms. Valentine that I appeared, quote, off when he encountered me on the night of August 5th, 2011, that I was behaving in a furtive manner suggestive of criminal enterprise. Our actions may all be explained by reference to certain formative experiences. Whether we are loved, whether we are well cared for, whether our parents wish we'd never been born. There are coruscating wounds, wounds that do not heal. They fester and suppurate. And so I remember the last time I saw my mother, the peanut butter and jelly sandwich she made me, sliced on the diagonal, the crust removed. I could never abide them. It sat on my plate with the note, remember, I love you, Ophelia. There was still a moment in time when she was combing my hair, smoothing the cowlicks. Remember, I love you, Ophelia. That she might have reconsidered, removed the valise from the trunk, forsaken Bob, none of us the wiser. There was still a moment before the screen door clacked against the door jamb, before she stepped out into the autumnal Saturday, leaves fluttering to the ground, there to rot and turn to mulch, that she might have thought the better of her plan to escape to Florida with the used car salesman. But she stepped over the threshold, clack, never looking back.
Perfect timing.
I know.
That's amazing.
She's a performer, this cat. I don't
No
know.
kidding. That's hilarious. Oh my God.
Great.
I love it.
Going to the other side now.
So
Wow.
what inspired this story? It sounds like it's like a crime mystery.
Yeah, it's a jailhouse confessional. So
Nice.
basically, I mean, Lolita is like my favorite book of all time. So
Oh,
for my
yeah.
entire writerly career, I've been looking for an excuse to write a jailhouse confessional.
Great.
Is basically like the genesis of it. So at some point, I mean, just different strands of things cohere, like different stories I've been hearing, sort of criminal type elements. And I thought, okay, this is the story, I want to, the narrator is a professor of Dante, she's kind of hyper intellectual, but also extremely unreliable in certain ways. And in the frame part of the narrative, she's telling her story or sort of rationalizing herself to the prison psychiatrist. And then in the, most of the forward action, she's narrating the events that led to her being in prison, basically.
That's fun.
So,
Unreliable or
yeah.
kind of crazy narrator.
I love crazy narrators,
fun.
and I just.
So just a question directly
Yeah.
about that, just about the unreliable narrator. Did you have to sort of outline it twice so that you would have the what actually happened and what she says happened thing going, or did you have that sort of held in your head?
I had her voice so in my head at a certain point, and it's kind of like, because I do really love unreliable narrators like Humbert Humbert, which I'm actually rereading my really old Lolita now at the same time.
It's so great.
I'm taking a class with Merve Emery through a New York Review of Books, and it's just, I'm noticing even more, like the fifth, sixth, whatever time, like I'm reading it now. Because you always have to find that way of the person is sort of like a fabulous, but at the same time, you have to have these kind of things puncturing, like reality coming through.
Yeah, the reader has to see the reality, or it's not like clever. Like,
yeah, I think that really happened for me in Lolita in that last scene when he goes to visit her and her life is just this sham, like it's like he destroyed her life.
It is, and what's so good is he's
horrifying.
such a narcissist and never kind of acknowledges his role, except the reader gets everything. Like just rereading the beginning part of it, there's this, when Charlotte, Lolita's mother, that he's just kind of married so he can have proximity to the nymphette, she writes him these letters, and in one of them it just kind of slips out, that Lolita's brother died, when he was 2, and this and that. So you learn these like really devastating pieces of information that he kind of just glosses over, but the reader gets it, and just like she writes those letters that, once she reads his diary, and realizes what he's up to. So it's there's sort of, that's really the fun of doing the unreliable narrator, is to just play with that whole dynamic. For me, yeah.
I want to come back and talk about it more later during the discussion, because this is it's just such a great topic. I love it, and Lolita is one of my favorite books too. So I totally am there. So let me introduce our next reader. Jimin Han is the author of The Apology. It was a Barnes & Noble's Discover pick, as I mentioned. It was named a Best Audiobook of the Year by Booklist, a Best Book of the Summer of Summer by the LA Times, Vanity Fair, and Shondaland, Apple Books, and more. She's also the author of A Small Revolution, which she read the last time she was with us. Additional writing of hers can be found at the American Public Media's Weekend America, Poets and Writers, and other media outlets. She teaches at the Writing Institute at Sarah Lawrence College, Pace University, and community writing centers. Born in Seoul, South Korea, she grew up in Providence, Rhode Island, Dayton, Ohio, and Jamestown, New York. Her work has been supported by the New York State Council on the Arts. We're delighted to welcome her back to Pen Parentis. Yay!
Thanks so much for having me, Christina and Milda and everyone at Pen Parentis. And I love that Niska is one of the sponsors.
We love it too.
Yeah, New York State Council is fantastic.
We love you, Niska.
No, I got it along with Chautauqua Institution. They had a special grant thing, and it was right after Salman Rushdie was stabbed at Chautauqua.
Wow!
Yeah, it's really special that NYSCA is supporting Chautauqua Institution that way. Yeah. So I loved what Carol read, and I think it's perfect for this topic. And hello, everyone. And I'm going to try to look at the camera on the laptop, which is always
that's good. You're good.
You are.
Hello, playback people. Yes.
So yeah, no, and Carol's character is named Ophelia, which is a whole other thing.
Same.
Yeah, right? And Hamlet stuff. I can't wait to read it. So this is The Apology, and it's narrated by a 105-year-old Korean woman who travels from Korea to the United States. So she doesn't go to New York, actually. We're talking about New York, but I don't know if anyone online is in San Francisco or Chicago or Dayton, Ohio. Those are the 3 places that she travels to in the book. So I'm excited to talk to you about this. I'll just read a little bit of the beginning, just the first page and a half. Okay. Fleeing in a panic is not recommended. A week ago, on my last day alive, I was at my grandson's house in Chicago, America. I was frantic. I got myself to my feet and ran. The heavy cypress door of the stocky house couldn't keep me in. Outside, I hurried as fast as I could along the sidewalk, head down, chills seeping into my skin, through my taupe linen suit jacket, over my white blouse, cotton undershirt, and wide-legged linen slacks. This was what it was to be old. No protections despite layers of clothing. It was summer, for goodness sake. To my left, houses and trees, vicious large trees, and across the street to my right, more trees, as if I were inside a large, endless cavern of trees that blocked the sun. In the very periphery of my vision, they crowded me, judged me. What gave them the right? I raised a fist at them and hurried on to increase the distance between me and the house I'd left, increase the distance between me and my family in that house. Judge me? Yes, they were judging me. I suppressed a sob that rose in my throat. Ignore them, Jung-ah, I told myself. Breathe and get oxygen to these old woman legs of yours. Breathe and hurry. Finally, the trees disappeared, and then there were traffic lights and tall buildings and American people and too bright of a sun. I was at the mercy of an onslaught of screeching car tires, belching truck exhausts, the stench of rotten wet tomatoes. Tomatoes too. Gasoline and grease assaulted my nose. I swerved right and then left. Where could I find a place to rest a moment away from everyone? I meant everyone. I was sick to death of the world. I needed to think. People swarmed around me, so close I thought at first it had started to rain, but it was sweat from a stranger that had landed on me. I flinched. Too close. Everyone was too close. Hot air, actually hot breath. What the hell, lady? Someone shouted in my face. Right in my face, how dare he? I wrenched my arms out of my jacket, dumped it in a trash container on the side of a building. I assumed it was a trash container. Who cared? A stranger's perspiration? No, thank you. I'd resented the trees and wished for warmth, but now I was in a worse place than before. Was it always going to be like this? Something worse around the corner? Foolish Jung-ah, my sister had called me many times. Really, everyone had. They were right. They'd all been right. What could I do now? Long time ago, I had a sister, and now this fact was returning to snatch the future away. I'll stop there.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
Wait, so
man.
I know I didn't mishear. The character is deceased by like a week or something, right? Did you say that?
This is
Yeah.
okay. So I guess kind of spoiler alert. At this moment, she's not dead.
Oh,
She's on her way.
She's
That
on.
happened.
Yeah, it said like it said like the next day she's going to be dead. She's not dead yet.
She's
I'm
not
dead
in
yet.
minutes.
Okay.
In minutes,
Yes,
she's going to be dead.
Yes. It's so funny.
Wonderful.
I'm actually really curious. Okay, so this is like out of totally nowhere, but 105. Why?
Yeah.
Why 105? That sounds really hard.
Yes. Well, because it is sort of a tragicomedy. And at 105, which is not to say anything about 105-year-olds, it's just to show there's a lot about her as a character that's extreme. And there are Korean women who live to 105. There are a lot of people who do. She's a particularly active 105-year-old, and it is about her will.
Nice.
Someone told me once that the way they got up every morning, talking about the human condition, was to think about this person they hated. Out of bed. And Jung-ah she's a character. She's not your Korean harmony who like cooks for you in this. She's not that kind of woman. She's a force. So it's really fun to write her. Yeah.
Was she Did you have to do, I mean, like research? Did you know any extreme elderly people that you were like, I need to go and visit to see just what this is like? Or
Yes, I read a lot about it. I definitely know some people who are probably not 105, but in their late 90s approaching. And it's fiction. So I'm glad it's not nonfiction in that way. And so I hope I got some things right about that. People have told me that it's close to that, but I think there's this Netflix show. I don't know if you've seen it, the Blue Zones. It's about regions of the world where people average over 100, where more
right.
people are that age, and they're riding horses. I mean, someone here is from Bogota. This was, in Central America. There's a man who's out there like, herding cattle on a horse, and he's over 100. So it's certainly.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying it's not unquestionable. I was just wondering what drew you to it. I used to read to Lou Reed's cousin, and she was 92 when I started reading to her, and she was 103 when she died. And so it was like just watching like this very extremely knowledgeable person who could remember things that are history to me, like ancient history to me. And she was like, oh, the Second Avenue subway, that's never going to open. They've been talking about that since 1927. Right. Like, it was so funny and cool, like to have a knowledge that long. But I was just thinking it's hard without knowing somebody that is that old. It's hard to project that, to imagine that. Like,
it's so interesting that this character, imagines these trees as vicious, like that's the kind of person she is. It's so funny and so interesting that she would see it that way,
Yeah.
Did you see in the Times yesterday? There was a doctor who works on longevity, and he's like, I'm going to live to 130.
How old is he now?
He's in his like 40s, but it just seemed.
Let's talk to him when he's 80 and see how he feels.
Seemed like too much. Like it's just like a little too much.
It's really funny.
It's possible. They say that if they say that it's basically our organs, right? And they're looking at all kinds of ways to grow our organs. Or I think there's a pig's heart that's just been transplanted into a human heart, into a human body. So if they can just figure out a way to deal with our organs, who knows?
Well, that's what the whole uploading your consciousness is the easiest. What did you say, Kate?
Would you want to live till 130?
I would. I'm so curious.
Yeah.
I want to know what happens. Yeah.
Well,
I think
doesn't it depend on the quality of living? I mean, like if you have dementia, wouldn't that totally suck? I'm
no,
so
you wouldn't
sorry.
know anything.
It would.
You'd just be like,
I'm terrified that might happen. Like, I'm like ADHD, and I have like, sometimes I wonder if it's Alzheimer's. Like, it's that bad, and I cannot imagine what it would be like not to remember who my loved ones are. And be afraid, right? Like,
yeah. But maybe you could sense them. I don't know. When you have children, like I think I felt differently about it before I had children, and now, of course, I want to live as long as I can because I want to
see
know
what happens.
I want to look out for them, and my grandchildren and my great grandchildren.
What were you going to say, Keith? You had something to say. What was it?
I was just imagining my rent in 30 years.
$1 million.
Yeah,
that's so true. It's going up 2% every year forever.
Yes.
That's so. Well, I mean, yeah, that's a good point. I love this. Okay, who's next? Human condition is a great topic. Everything is so human.
And I'm glad we're going to talk about it more. So I'm going to introduce our last author, and I just want to say, so. As curator, I can figure out sometimes who is a parent by knowing people and going to conferences and getting to know them a little. And sometimes I just don't know. And the only way to do it is to reach out to people and be like, are you a parent? And this is why, or whatever.
It's not awkward at all.
It's not the least bit awkward or weird. But I actually read a review of Keith's book and he's going to read from it, Raising Raffi. So I was like, this guy is very likely to be a father. So I'm going to approach him, and luckily we have him tonight. So everyone, this is Keith Gessen. He's a contributing writer at The New Yorker. He was born in Moscow and grew up outside of Boston. He's the founding editor of a literary magazine, N+1, and the author of 2 novels, including most recently, A Terrible Country. He is also the author of Raising Raffi, a book of essays about parenting. He teaches magazine journalism at Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism and has been contributing essays and features to The New Yorker since 2006. This is his first time at Pen Parentis.
We're so happy to have him.
Yay!
Thank you. Thank you for that nice introduction. Yes, so this is Raising Raffi, a book about parenting, for what it's worth. I'm just going to read the beginning of an essay about teaching and also not teaching Raffi Russian. I don't remember when exactly I started speaking Russian to Raffi. It wasn't when he was in the womb, though I've since learned that this is when babies first start recognizing sound patterns. And I didn't speak to him in Russian in the first few weeks of his life. It felt ridiculous to do so. All he could do was sleep and scream and breastfeed, and really the person I was talking to when I talked to him was his mother, who was sleep-deprived and on edge and needed company. Emily does not know Russian. But then at some point I started. It turned out I liked the feeling when I carried him through the neighborhood or pushed him in his stroller of having our own private language. Did you see that baby? I would say in Russian. That was a cute baby. I liked the number of endearments to which Russian gave me access. Mushkin, Maskin, Glaskin, мой хороший, мой любимый, мой маленький мальчик. It is a language surprisingly rich in endearments, given its history. And to me, it was the language of childhood, the language of love for children, the language in which my parents and grandmothers had spoken to me. When we started reading books to Raffi, I included some Russian ones in the rotation. A friend had handed down a beautiful book of Daniel Harms's poems for children, illustrated by the Russian artist Igor Aleynikov. The poems are not nonsense verse, but they are pretty close, and to my surprise, Raffi enjoyed them. I enjoyed them too. Иван Иванович самовар был пузатый самовар, трехведерный самовар, went the first poem. And then the poem tells the story of how various members of a family come and get some tea from the samovar until finally little Dennis wants some tea, but there is none left because he has slept too late. There's a poem about 2 dogs who make a mess in an artist's studio, and another about 3 little kids pretending to be a car, a postal steamship, and a Soviet airplane, respectively. Harms was a member of the Ober U Poets, an avant-garde group in 1920s Leningrad. He was a genius and an eccentric. He was not anti-Soviet exactly, but he was attuned to the horrors of the age and couldn't prevent them from seeping into his work. In 1937, the bloodiest year of the Stalinist purges, Harms published a poem in The Hedgehog, a popular children's magazine. It is about a man who leaves his house with a walking stick and a sack. In Eugene Ostashevsky and Matvei Yankelievich's translation, a man walked out of his house with a walking stick and a sack, and on he went, he never did turn back. He walked as far as he could see, he saw what lay ahead, he never drank, he never slept, nor drank, nor ate. Then once upon a morning he entered a dark wood, and on that day he disappeared for good. If anywhere by any chance you meet him in his travels, then hurry please, and tell us. The poem was apparently about Harms's dream of escaping the big city, but it could also be read as an allegory about the purges. Apparently, some people did so read it because Harms stopped being published. He stopped receiving payments due from his publisher, and he and his wife began to starve. Here's how hunger begins, he writes in Robert Chandler's translation. First you wake in good cheer, then weakness begins, and then boredom, and then comes the loss of the power of swift reason, and then comes calm, and then the horror. Harms was finally arrested in 1941 once the war had begun and died in the psych ward of the famous Kresty prison in February 1942, probably of starvation. In the book of Harms's poems from which I read to Raffi, none of this was indicated. The poem about the man who disappears was in the middle of the book, and I would sing it. I happened to know the tune because the Soviet bard Alexander Galich, one of the culture heroes I had inherited from my parents, had written a song about Harms's arrest in which he embedded the lyrics of the poem about the man who leaves the house. I felt its whole strange, tragic history in my chest as I sang it to Raffi, but Raffi, of course, had no idea. In any case, he really liked it. When he got old enough to request what I read to him at around 2, he would request that song and then dance.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. I have so you said, and then didn't finish teaching him Russian?
Yes, I spoke Russian to him pretty adamantly, despite his, being very embarrassed by it and annoyed by it and resistant to it, up until about 7.5.
Wow, that's pretty long.
And I always knew that I would have to stop, just because my own Russian is.
You run out when they start asking about excavators. You're like,
exactly. Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, or geometry or whatever. Yeah. So,
or like deep human emotions, like really deep ones. They're like, I don't know. We didn't talk like that. we didn't talk about emotions.
Yes. So I hit that when he was 7.5. But unfortunately for his younger brother, his younger brother was 4.5 when that happened, and so his Raffi understands Russian still.
Right.
He doesn't speak it, but his brother not so much.
Yeah, well, it'll come back. The sounds are all in his brain.
Yeah,
all in both of their brains. The sounds are there.
Well, the thing to do would be to go to Russia, but
that not right now.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Not right now.
Not right now.
Or you could go to Brighton Beach. That's the same thing.
Yeah. No, we do.
It's just sorry. My background is Lithuanian, so I had the same exact sort of issues of, I think, many people who are of a culture married to another culture, raising their kids in America. It's like, do I? Don't I? How much work do I deal with, and whatever. But what I really wanted to talk about was I love the thing about Soviet art. There's like the double layeredness of the simplest stuff. Because when you were reading about that song, I remember singing a song that was also about a duck crossing a pond. Somebody throws a red blanket on the duck, but the duck gets out. And it's like, oh, could that be symbolic? Who knows, And it just made me think that we don't really do that in this country. We don't do double meaning stuff as much as other countries where the oppression is clear. And I'm just
yeah. I mean, one thing I read when I was researching children's books was Eric Carle, author of
the Hang Caterpillar.
He went through the Second World War in Germany, and his father his parents were German. He was born in the U.S., but then they went back to Germany in the 30s. And his father ended up being drafted into the army and serving on the Eastern Front. I think he was a POW in a Russian POW, and then came back a shell of a man. And Eric Carle, and there's no trace of this in A Very Hungry Caterpillar.
Right.
And my interpretation of that was that he'd gone through a really intense war experience and really wanted to write very innocent books.
Yeah, a lot of times people who have deep trauma want to bring purity and clarity and innocence into the world where it's just completely simple and wholesome and devoid of anything bad.
But also children's writing is very poetic, and it's its own little, it seems so easy, but it's so hard
to not be boring and not be condescending
to write it well.
Things. Right.
And it's so funny you mentioned Eric Carle, because he was commissioned by the Columbia Presbyterian to paint their walls for the kids. And one of the paintings that he did is in the interior of the building. The only people who can see it are the kids who are going into surgery. He did it just for them.
Oh, that's nice.
And
Wow.
Yeah, when I was going through that experience with my son, it was like this little gift that was like
That's
the
so
secret
nice.
little
Nobody
gift.
else gets this.
No
but
one
you.
else gets
Nice.
it.
That's
Wow.
what a nice thing. That's super cool. Let me just real quick run through each of you and just give me the around the ages of your kids. Like you don't have to say exact if you don't want to, but you can if you want to. But you can also be like toddlers or teenagers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So just
just
go through just real quick.
Well, I also wanted to say one other thing. My father grew up on the border of Korea at the time, right? And Russia. And so he used to teach us. He used to speak in Russian to us. He was trying to teach us how to count. That's what he did with numbers up to 10 in Russian. Yeah. So anyway.
Well, yeah, there was like this idea that you want to communicate with people.
Well, I think it reminded him. Yeah. And childhood brings up all that stuff from his childhood. I mean, that's, basically that's what Keith is saying too. My kids are 24 and 21.
Yay, established parenthood.
I'm so happy.
It's so great. It's nice to know that there is a publication date for children. Yeah,
great.
That's great.
My son's 19.
Nice.
Wow.
Are you still little, Keith?
Yeah, they're 8 and 5.
Oh,
delicious though.
Hiding in the corner of the apartment.
I love it. That's fantastic. And am I right, Keith? Your wife is also an author. Am I right? She's also a writer. Can I ask you? Would you mind telling us like how you guys deal with that? With each of you needing to write, each of you needing to find a way. Yeah, but I mean, like, is it explicit or is it like, I have a deadline, I get the time, or is it like we
try to take turns with like who gets the kind of
the peace and quiet.
Yeah. The one good rule that we have, and I think like we're still working on being
everything's a work in progress.
2-writer family, but and now Rafi likes writing.
Yes, I love it. I can't wait till he tells you guys need to be quiet so I can get my writing done.
Yeah, we're trying to discourage that as much as possible. I'm like, isn't there anything else?
My son asked me when he was like about 5. He asked me if he said, I think I want to be a writer. I said, here's the way to do it. Go get a career that pays a lot of money. Go to the top of that career. At the top of that career, you can write any book you want and anybody will publish it.
That's true.
But first make your bio.
Yes. Our one, I think the one thing that we've gotten right so far is when we share each other's work. We used to be like, oh, maybe we should change this, maybe we should change that, like editors, and that created a bad vibe in the house. So now we just say, I loved it.
I'm so glad you wrote this page.
Yes, it's so good. So great. And that has really improved our relationship.
That's awesome. That's really good. Well, and it's kind of interesting because as the writer who's writing the thing that you're giving raw to somebody, like you kind of know just as you're writing it, knowing that it's going to that person, it becomes better, right? Just like when you're sending something out in a query to an agent, when you look at it, you're like, oh wait, let me just rewrite the whole thing. Like,
yes,
I can't send it out like this. But it takes the intimate knowledge of the reader, which I guess eventually maybe, I don't know, Jimin, do people eventually have that in their heads? Like, do you have your ideal writer in your head that you already know who you're writing to? Or Keith, when you're writing for the New Yorker, do you know who's reading? And you're like, I'm just writing for this particular.
Yeah, absolutely. I think about the person, but I hear what Keith is saying. My husband's an architect, so we don't have that. And my kids are both artists, so they went in that direction, nice. Which I'm kind of sad about because they're both great writers. Mm-hmm. And the younger one recently was saying that when she came home for spring break, she was suddenly in her room working on this novel that she's been working on for years. So, awesome. So maybe, sorry, I know this. You just said this is forever on the internet.
It is forever on the internet. So, when she wins her Nobel Prize, somebody's going to dig it up and be like, look, her mom was so proud of her back in 2024.
She was already working on it.
So great.
There it is.
Your ancestors, what are they? Descendants, like like
Yeah.
4 generations down, somebody will be like, oh my gosh, did you know that great-great-great-grandma both and great-great-great-great-grandma were both writers?
I know that I love their writing, and I often talk. Actually, I'll talk to them about story ideas and we just have fun talking about it. But I think what's nice, Keith, is that at least your kids are school age, right? They 8 and 5.
Nice.
You're through the
hardest,
worst of it.
The weeds are hard.
Yeah.
But, you know, they're constantly like not having school.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's a New York thing all the time. It's like,
right.
oh, is it vacation again? And now it's a half day. And
Yeah.
now I have to come in for a math celebration.
Did you hear about the school in Brooklyn now that is 12 hours, 7 to 7?
What?
Really?
Yeah, for working parents. It's a charter school. It was just in the Times today.
Oh, wow.
But to help working parents.
Wait, what's it called?
Is it every single day that long?
Every day, 7 to 7.
Wait,
5 days a week?
Monday to Friday. And they said the kids love it. The kids love it because they set up things for them, like they're drumming, they're playing with their friends. It
looks like my screen froze, but it was just my face.
And Carol, is yours in high school, college, getting ready to go to college?
He's in college now.
Yeah,
And so he's at NYU. So he's actually still living in the house. I thought.
That happens.
Yeah.
Do you like that?
I actually do. You know, I kept thinking he would go away, and I did encourage him strenuously to go away. But he wanted to stay here. And now it's actually kind of nice because there's, built-in dog sitting, and I've been on way more vacations than I've been in a
Yeah,
long
you could probably
time.
go on like writing residencies and your plants won't die.
Yeah, I mean, the dog is getting walked. He actually did laundry, like when I went away for a couple of weeks in December, and took care of the house. And I came home and it wasn't a mess. And it was like, wow.
Oh, get out. That is so incredible.
Like we're like talking about this, like this is so normal to talk about among writers, but it is so rare to be ever talking about like the combination of the writing and the life. And I'm just curious, like has there ever been a time where you ran into that sort of stereotype prejudice where you're just like, I have to hide that I'm a parent, or I'm going to get ostracized? Because I know like in the early days when we first started doing these salons, like the women especially would cry because in their MFA programs, they were told like, do not have kids. It's going to ruin your career.
Wow.
Yeah. And like now it feels more open, but can you think of a time where like it was not so good, especially those of you with like children that are now easy?
I think it's become a lot more accepted. I do. And there's so many, most of the writers that I know do have young children now. They do have kids. So I think that's helped a lot. And in my early days, I was a lawyer. So, I felt like I had to kind of hide more family stuff back then than I do with,
in general, like all the professions, everybody hid.
Yeah. Like you're not supposed to pretend you don't have a private life,
Yeah.
But I think it's gotten a lot better.
Have you guys done residencies? Have you been able to like get away?
I used to go upstate in the summer, not really a residency, but I used to go to the New York State Writers Conference, which I love. They have a lot of great writers that come every year. Some, who do workshops, others who just come to read or do like a, 2-hour talk. And I went up there for like, 7 or 8 years in a row.
Is it a weekend or a week?
No, it's actually 2 weeks, which is like a sort of perfect amount of time. And you're not in class every day. You have you're Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But they have lectures and other things. So you have enough space around it, and I found it, very conducive to, the creative enterprise. I'm kind of a little scared of residencies because I don't do that well with utter quiet. I feel like I actually need a little craziness to be productive because I'm used to my life being a little crazy. Especially I think when you have kids, you're used to a certain level of that. So then like when I go to write, it's like my escape, and I know like I need to do it like in the next hour and a half, and I have to, you know, finish. So I have to do the next thing. But I think
it ratchets up the value of your
stakes,
time,
exactly.
right? Yeah, to have that. Did you find that, Keith, when you had the kids, that it was like, okay, now I have this much time to write, I better be productive? Or did it just sort of flow easily from before to after?
I remember when the first time we got a babysitter, and I had like 3 hours, and I was like, 3 hours. You know, I'll get like 2 days worth, you know, and then but then it wore off pretty quickly, actually. And then we were like, we need 4 hours, 5 hours.
more time.
Yeah. Now, and like, I'm going to sign up for that school.
Yeah.
I'm going to science school, I think.
Oh,
So I have a question. So when you guys signed on for this, you know, the topic of the human condition, what drew you to this topic? Carol, let's start with you.
Yes. Well, I actually think, you know, it's a topic, but on the other hand, it's exactly what we do as writers. That's the whole game, is the human condition. And I mean, writing almost, you know, more so than any of the other arts is the one way we have of experiencing through another person's eyes, of actually, you know, kind of transmuting our lives onto the page. And I think that writing uniquely can depict human consciousness. You know, I mean, movies kind of tries to do that sometimes, you know, from certain characters' point of views, but writing is really the only way that we can really inhabit another person's consciousness, literally inhabit it. And I think that that's, you know, the thing that's so intrinsically amazing about what we do as writers. So I think just it's everything, you know, that just encompasses everything, the human condition, you know, with what we do as writers. And just, you know, like when I was reading, or when I was listening to Jimin, and you were talking about you know, the narrative voice and this and that. I mean, that's what we do. Like, we create these real people that have you know, their own consciousness, their own personalities, their own verbal tics, you know, all of that. And that's like, for me, like just one of the most amazing things, you know, as being a writer, is we get to create our own worlds and then live inside them. You know, it's kind of like so yeah, so I just love the topic.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, you know, yesterday with that solar eclipse, wasn't it incredible?
Oh man,
how people travel to experience it, right? They weren't just happy seeing it on TikTok or on YouTube, on television. They had to see it with their own eyes. Yeah. And it made me feel so hopeful in a way I haven't felt in a really long time. Thinking about all the stuff that's happening around the world right now. I mean, talking about how we as humans really don't do things that are good for us as a whole, as earthlings, whether it's climate and war and just we, in terms of the human condition, it just hasn't looked very good, I think. Right? And I think yesterday with that solar eclipse, it showed that, I don't know. I mean, someone said to me once at a panel, they were like, "Oh, I think you know, young people now, they're not so these younger kids are not interested in reading and all that." And I was like, "No, that's actually, I don't believe that. I think the human condition is to be drawn to stories, and I think that what we see on social media, the lies, the politics, the things that's being spun is all about stories. So whoever can tell this story, people are gravitating towards story over and over again. And so I feel hopeful again in some ways, but I hope we need more of those kinds of moments that remind us that we're human and that we have to do the work. Book banning, I mean, women's bodies, like all the ways in which we are not helping ourselves at all. So I'm hopeful. So this is a great topic. I hope we can continue to tell the stories that are true and matter.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think, Jimin, when you mentioned the eclipse, it was the first time in a really long time where there were so many people out. And I literally, to the point I was like, doesn't anyone work? But we were all out, and you could hear the awe. Like everyone was like, wow, oh wow. Like, and
my favorite was like, I had the paper glasses, paper glasses, and there were teenagers that were coming up on my roof. I went up on the roof to look, and the teenagers were like, I don't know, it's not going to be cool. It's going to be whatever. Like, I'm just whatever. And I'll be like, no, you have to look through these. And then they're like, oh my God, holy shit, like this is great. And they were just so alive and so like excited and connected and like eager and it was like, oh yeah, that is it. Like it,
and believing in science. Let's believe in science.
And we're all sharing this moment.
It only takes a once in a lifetime global event to like, make that tingle happen. But it's interesting. Like, can we get that excited about like, finding a penny on the street or like some tiny little happy thing that's small? Can we find that same, like, what a wonderful, like,
turning away from war. Like, yes. Like,
what's so funny was during the eclipse when it was just about like full or whatever. And there was that moment when it got really cool.
Yes, and everyone was like, it's so cold. Yeah.
And I thought to I felt that dip in my stomach, like, oh, it felt like an actual experience, like in life, oh God, that,
and it felt like how important the sun was. Like it wasn't entirely covered and it was colder. It was like,
yes. Why was that exactly? It didn't make sense, but right.
Really, and then also how powerful it was because it wasn't entirely covered and it was still pretty light. Like it was clearly daylight, even though it was 90% covered. It was still daylight. I was like, wow, there's an awful lot of light coming off of that ball in the fireball in the sky. Like, so cool.
Fact, if you didn't have those glasses and you looked at, well, I didn't look at it directly.
I was going to say, you don't.
I had the glasses on and I was taking photos. And when I looked at the photos, I'm like, it looks like it's perfectly full.
Yeah.
And then when I looked through my glasses, they were, you'd see the
edges and the, That's wild. Keith, why did you choose this topic? What was it about it that
I was thinking about your in connection with your previous question about like parenting and writing. Years ago, I translated the work of a Russian writer named Lyudmila Petrushevskaya. It was amazing. And she's still alive, but she was already, kind of on in years. This was about 15 years ago. And she came over to New York and I kind of was taking her around and she'd spent some time with me. And I was like 33, 34. And, she kind of looked at me one day and she's like, Kostya, I wanted to write since I was a little girl. I was always writing, but I didn't become a real writer until I had my first child. And I'd kind of spent my youth being like, I must be a writer. I must like prevent myself from having any kind of family. Or
I cannot fall in love. This cannot happen. Yeah, it's like, no.
It came from like the literature of male, writers who were like, the family is the enemy of your writing, and there's too many examples to name, from Henry James to like Charles Bukowski, right? So it's like, or Philip Roth. But then I was like, why did Petrushevskaya say that to me? Like, what was it about me that kind of, and because I was like in my mid 30s and I was just like hanging out. I didn't have any, I didn't know what I was doing. I thought I knew what I was doing, but anyway, and like, I found that having kids actually has connected me to humanity in a way that I would not have, and I had not been, before.
Well, there's definitely something at stake.
Oh yeah, yes, they might die, right? And
it's every second.
Every second, they're trying. They're just like
Stop.
jumping off things all the time, eating things that shouldn't be babies. But also, and it connects you to like your parent. You start thinking about your parents as well. I mean, it has connected me to like the great change,
to the history, to the all the things. You're just a person in all of history. And
I keep thinking about that Philip Larkin poem. Man, hands on misery to man. Right? And it's just like, it has not been improved upon, really. Like that's all it is. That's all we've been doing. But we're trying.
Yeah.
We're trying not to.
That's super funny. It's so true. I'm wondering if anybody out in viewer land has comments that they want to make. I'm just going to look, but I don't see anybody. Nope. We're just going to keep talking then. That's good. The other thing that you learn from kids really well when they're yours is the acquisition of delight, the way to look at things differently, right? They look at something, it's new to them, and you've seen it a million times, and they're like, why doesn't every single tulip have a different smell? Like, you're like, because they're tulips. Like, but they're green and yellow and pink and blue, and they should all smell different. You're like,
that's true.
Yes. How strange. Right. I love that, the acquisition of knowledge and how it comes to them, because eventually they will all be like, like us. They'll have like, I know what I know, and you can't tell me any different, But while they're little, they're still like, well, I have questions, like, and it's kind of lovely. It's very lovely.
Yeah. And time. I think what Keith said about time, right? And Carol too, like time is totally different once you have kids. Your sense of time, right? So that you use it a little bit. There's no time for, I had so much self-doubt, and I still do, but then it was like, got to get going. Got it,
doubt or no doubt.
Time for this.
Got to keep going.
That's so true. Do you guys have any like gems that worked for you when you were in the throes of, oh my gosh, I have no time, this deadline, I have to write, like do you have any gems that like come to you where you're like, oh, you know what I did this, like to like get some minute to work? Because like for me, I put my baby on the table. Like when my infant was an infant, he was on the table next to me, and he slept on the table. So I didn't have any worries about like what he was doing. He was sleeping. I saw it. It was fine. And it was like until he learned to roll over, and then it was the end of production.
I had an amazing, I had an amazing group of writer friends who are also all mothers, and the kids had a kids writing group, and we had our writing group, and we would all meet at somebody's house. And while we wrote,
was that a run writing group? Like, was the kids writing group, it had a moderator or something that like made them run, or did you just be like, okay, kids, go write, because that's what we're doing?
Yeah, they wrote. Several of them are musicians now. They created a band. The older kids took care of the younger kids. It was
that is so amazing.
It was an interesting. Well, and I met the other parents at a creative preschool. That was a creative arts preschool. So everyone sort of had the same sort of outlook and approach to life. So, but what we did was we wrote. We didn't talk when we were together, our writers group. We used the time to write. We came up with a writing prompt and we wrote. And, there's a playwright. They were working in different genres, and we just used the time to write. And I just think about how other parents helped me so much. I had a friend when my first one was born as an infant in New York City when we lived there, and she needed the time to go. She wanted to go work out at the gym. And I would say, so I would watch her baby and my baby, and then she would watch our kids and I would write.
Yes, that's a really good idea to like trade off childcare with another parent.
But just to talk about it, which is exactly what this organization is about, and to let people know. Of course, when I'm around writers who don't have kids, I don't want to talk about kids because you can just see their eyes glaze over.
Yeah, of course.
They're not
They're like, I don't want to hear about your child.
Nope.
Yeah.
They just can't relate. It really is strange how you really go off to, talking about the planet, but it's such a different world. It's hard to explain to someone if they don't have kids. But anyway, if you meet another parent, I say, just keep talking about your life as a writer and as a parent, and find like-minded people.
Yeah, one of the things that we say all the time is that like it's pretty easy to find other people who can help you with your parenting. Like the talking about the parent, like, oh, my kid's not sleeping, I'm not eating the thing, whatever. Like there's all the parent conversation is so easy to have with other people. but it is so unusual to be able to talk about, like, how do you get your writing done? Like, what do you do when you're writing and then all of a sudden your kid comes in and you have to stop? Like, how do you deal with that? Like, without yelling, like, what do you do? And all of those questions are so great. And we do that in our little accountability groups. But I assume that you guys all have writing communities too. Do you have a way? Do you have people that are supportive of your writing and helpful of your writing, or is it just like you and your spouse, or is it like what do your communities look like right now? If you,
I mean, when my son was younger, well, first of all, I trained him to sleep from like 10 to 10, which was
nice.
That was the best
child
part.
Whisperer.
and I didn't get him off that schedule until he went to preschool. And I was like petrified that he would start waking up super early because I write in the mornings and I always have. So that kind of cemented my writing routine because I was always done. You know, I just wrote from like 7 to 8:30 or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I felt kind of, by the time he awoke, I felt like I don't have to really be competing with my time. And it just, but I mean, I know that a lot of kids just get up at 6 a.m, but
5. I mean, there's
or 5, yeah,
or they don't sleep all night. There's like all the things,
never slept.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No sleeping.
You kind of don't know till they show up, like how they are going to be sleeping. But that definitely helped a lot. And I think that's one of the reasons I just kind of write the exact same amount practically every day. You know,
like because you got used to it.
Yeah, I think it's just like
that's so cool.
at this point where I just couldn't write longer if I wanted to. It's just kind of, but when he was 3, he went to like an all day, not a 12-day,
12 hours.
He started going to this French preschool, and I sent him there because it was around the block, and B, it was like one of the few roughly all day ones. You know, it was till like 3 p.m. So that made things a little bit easier. But you know, I just wanted to echo to what, you know, Keith was saying about when you're a parent, your writing experience really does, you know, or your experience of the human condition really is enriched, you know, in really profound ways. And you do have that kind of knowledge of, I mean, I certainly started writing much more about people at all different phases of their lives, kids, older people, you know, just imagining like intergenerational things, you know, and I remember back when I was going up to the New York State Writers Institute every summer, one of the students in my workshop asked Rick Moody, who was my mentor, and and I was in workshop with him for many years, and they asked him like, what is your regret as a writer, or what do you wish, you know, you had done differently? And he said, you know, I wish I had more life experience before I started. Like, I wish I had those types of, you know, I worked XYZ job, or I had a family, or, you know, all those things that really do. I mean, they enrich your life, but they do enrich your writing too. I mean, I think it's kind of, whether it's, you know, Philip Roth or whatever, that has kind of gotten us in this notion that it's a competition, or we've had these kind of like, you know, male, you know, like Picasso type figures that we just think it's completely incompatible, but it's not. And I do think that is a kind of idea that rests in people's minds, or makes them fearful of having a family, because they just think that then I'll never write again. And, you know, it's not the case. That, you know, you're always find a way. You find a way to do it. So
I went to the Nobel Prize Museum. They have a Nobel Prize Museum in Stockholm, and I was on a layover, so I went to the museum because I'm weird that way. And but I went specifically because I wanted to see like the literature nominees, and I wanted to see if they had kids. So I read all their bios, and the year that I was there, out of the 10 that had won in the last 10 years, 8 of them had kids. So just throwing that statistic out there in case anybody feels like making conclusions from it.
I like our odds here.
I know, right? It's pretty good.
Kids, I think we're going to have, one of us.
Listen, you guys, I can't believe that our hour is up, but it is up, and that's insane. Thanks to the Writers Room and to NISCA and the NEA and the DeGroat Foundation, we love you, and the Poetry Foundation, who have been great supporters of ours. So yeah, thanks for that. And next month is May, which is our season closer, which is super exciting. Who is reading? Emily, is it Emily?
Yep.
Emily Rabbitoe, she's amazing. And Jessamine Chan, School for Good Mothers.
That was a great novel.
And oh my God. And who's the third? Who's the third?
The third is Jessamine and
Tune in to find out who our third reader is for our big, massive season close. And it's going to be like some huge name. So we're going to be like super embarrassed that we could not pull it out of our minds because we're too busy thinking about babies. What?
Well, thank you both for creating this organization.
Oh, it's our pleasure, and we hope that people will join and enjoy it and donate and do all the things and come back every month, because on the second Tuesday of the month, we always present 3 fabulous writers who happen to have children and who talk about their craft and their personalities and their lives and whatever the theme of the day is. And
so
then
Matthew Lawrence Garcia is the third reader.
See?
That's kind of
okay, so we'll see you all next month. Bye, everyone.